I was still standing when it happened. "The project is being reassigned," my boss said, voice calm, eyes sliding past me. "It's the fair decision." The room went quiet. My ears burned. 12 people sat there watching me lose my work in real time. The work I built. The work I protected. The work he just handed away. A man across the table smiled. Not at me. At the screen. Like it already belonged to him. My chest tightened. I tasted metal. I wanted to speak, but my tongue felt glued down. I nodded instead, because anger in public costs women like me everything. Someone cleared their throat. Chairs shifted. My phone vibrated in my lap. An email. Time-stamped 1 minute earlier. Subject: Project Reassignment. I opened it with shaking fingers. This change ensures fairness across the team. Fairness. I took a screenshot before my hands could betray me. This is the moment my career split in two. This is the moment my boss decided I was expendable. And this is the moment he made a mistake. My name is Megan Hart. I'm 33 years old. I didn't know it yet, but that screenshot was about to ruin him. Everyone thought the story ended there, but it was only beginning, and I was done being quiet from this point. I stayed seated after the meeting, staring at the empty chair beside me. People avoided my eyes as they filed out. Sympathy is loud when it's fake and silent when it's real. The silence hurt more. My boss, Daniel Cross, didn't look back. He walked out laughing, already relaxed, already free of the damage he caused. I went to the bathroom and locked myself in a stall. My reflection looked composed. My hand shook anyway. I pressed my fingers into my palm until the trembling slowed. This project was mine. I had been hired to fix a failing system. He told me I was perfect for it. He told me I was trusted. For months ago, a new hire arrived. He asked questions I had already answered. He echoed my ideas louder. Daniel listened to him differently. I told myself to work harder, to be patient, to earn fairness. At my desk, another email waited. Praise for new leadership momentum. My name wasn't included. I opened old messages. Compliments. Promises. Midnight thank yous. All from Daniel. All dated before today. That's when it clicked. He didn't forget my value. He replaced it. And he assumed I wouldn't notice, wouldn't remember, wouldn't fight back. That assumption would cost him his reputation, his authority, his allies, and eventually, his job inside the company. I didn't confront Daniel. I didn't ask why. I did something colder. I opened a blank document and typed today's date at the top. Below it, I wrote exactly what happened in that room. Who spoke? Who stayed silent? Who smiled? Then I opened my inbox. I searched my name. Dozens of emails appeared. Praise. Approval. Trust. I saved them all. I searched the project name. I saved those too. Every file went into a folder I labeled with the date. Then I copied it to a private drive. At 10:30, Daniel sent a message. Can you send the latest files to support the transition? Support. I replied politely. I asked him to confirm which files he needed. He answered quickly. I saved that message. I sent the files, only the ones he requested. Nothing extra. Across the office, I watched the new lead struggle through my slides. He stumbled on a section I had solved months ago. Daniel stepped in to help him. I wrote that down. By lunch, my anger had cooled into something sharper. This wasn't about emotion anymore. It was about proof. If Daniel wanted to rewrite history, I would archive the original. Quietly. Patiently. He thought the danger passed. He didn't realize the record had just begun. And I was ready for what followed. By the end of the week, the story had changed. Daniel spoke about fairness like it was a gift he handed out. He said the project needed fresh energy. People nodded. I sat still. The new lead asked me for guidance in front of everyone. His voice was unsure. Daniel watched closely. Ask Megan, Daniel said. She knows the details. The room turned toward me. I answered calmly. I explained the process. I corrected a mistake without blaming anyone. Daniel smiled, relieved. After the meeting, he stopped by my desk. Thank you for being flexible, he said softly. This is about balance. Balance. That afternoon, a client issue surfaced. A risk I warned about months earlier finally broke through. Daniel panicked. He messaged me directly. Can you help fix this quickly? I asked him to confirm the request in writing. He did. I solved it in 20 minutes. I documented every step. I sent the solution and copied exactly who he requested. In the follow-up call, Daniel praised the new lead for handling pressure well. I said nothing. Instead, I updated my timeline. Date. Problem. Solution. Credit given. This wasn't revenge yet. This was positioning. Daniel believed charm could smooth anything over. He didn't understand charm fails when facts start speaking for themselves. And I was no longer reacting anymore. The praise campaign started the following week. Emails went out celebrating progress. Meetings opened with compliments. Daniel smiled more. He stood taller. None of it was for me. The new lead repeated my language during a presentation. Same phrasing. Same structure. Even the same pause before the conclusion. Daniel nodded proudly. My face stayed neutral. My stomach burned. After the meeting, I returned to my desk and opened my folder. I added the meeting recording. I clipped the exact moment my words left his mouth. I placed it beside the original document I wrote months earlier. Timestamps matched. That night I stayed late. The office emptied. The lights dimmed. I pulled up my performance reviews. Every score. Every comment. Every sentence praising my leadership. I saved them. At home I didn't complain. I didn't vent. I built a clean timeline from the first assignment to the reassignment email. A pattern formed, clearly. Every shift happened after one private conversation between Daniel and the new lead. This was no misunderstanding. This was replacement. Daniel believed fairness meant equal opportunity. I knew fairness meant accountability. I wasn't planning a scene. I wasn't planning revenge. I was preparing for exposure. And once the truth is organized properly, it doesn't need emotion to destroy a lie. It only needs light. The first real crack showed up on a Thursday morning. A client deadline was missed. Not by me. Daniel paced the hallway. His voice carried through the glass walls. He blamed the vendor. Then the timeline. Then the client. Finally, he messaged me. Can you help smooth this over? Just temporarily. Temporarily meant quietly. I replied calmly. I asked him to outline exactly what he needed. He did. I saved the message. I fixed the issue in less than 30 minutes. It was a problem I had warned about in writing months earlier. I forwarded the solution and copied only the people Daniel requested. In the emergency meeting that followed, Daniel praised the new lead for staying composed under pressure. My jaw tightened. I said nothing. Afterward, Daniel stopped by my desk. Thanks for stepping up, he said. This is teamwork. Teamwork doesn't erase authorship. I updated my timeline again. Date. Issue. Solution. Credit given. This was no longer preparation. This was leverage. Daniel thought he was in control because no one challenged him. He didn't realize control fades the moment someone starts documenting instead of reacting. And I was finished reacting. From this point on, I would only move when the outcome was guaranteed. My jaw tightened. I said nothing. Afterward, Daniel stopped by my desk. Thanks for stepping up, he said. This is teamwork. Teamwork doesn't erase authorship. I updated my timeline again. Date. Issue. Solution. Credit given. This was no longer preparation. This was leverage. Daniel thought he was in control because no one challenged him. He didn't realize control fades the moment someone starts documenting instead of reacting. And I was finished reacting. From this point on, I would only move when the outcome was guaranteed. The office felt different the next morning. People moved cautiously, like the air itself had shifted. Daniel's absence left a silent tension. Conversations paused when I entered a room. Eyes flicked to my desk before continuing elsewhere. I sipped my coffee slowly, watching the subtle changes. I didn't need to speak. They noticed who had been right all along. Leadership called a short meeting. Only me and the managers. Your documentation was thorough, one said. It clarified a lot. I nodded and smiled politely, but inside, I felt a quiet vindication that didn't need celebrating. After the meeting, a colleague stopped by. Thanks for showing the truth, she whispered. We all saw what he was doing. I said nothing. I only nodded. Words weren't necessary. Proof had spoken. By afternoon, I received a note from HR requesting input on the project handover. My timeline, my emails, my screenshots, everything was now formally recognized. I looked at my screen, scrolling through months of organized proof. Each entry told a story Daniel couldn't rewrite. Each timestamp was a step forward. The quiet was sweeter than applause. And I understood then what patience really meant. Not revenge. Not confrontation. Just being meticulous, methodical, and unshakable. I leaned back in my chair, letting the office hum around me. Finally, control was mine, without anyone knowing it was earned. The office felt different the next morning. People moved cautiously, like the air itself had shifted. Daniel's absence left a silent tension. Conversations paused when I entered a room. Eyes flicked to my desk before continuing elsewhere. I sipped my coffee slowly, watching the subtle changes. I didn't need to speak. They noticed who had been right all along. Leadership called a short meeting. Only me and the managers. Your documentation was thorough, one said. It clarified a lot. I nodded and smiled politely, but inside, I felt a quiet vindication that didn't need celebrating. After the meeting, a colleague stopped by. Thanks for showing the truth, she whispered. We all saw what he was doing. I said nothing. I only nodded. Words weren't necessary. Proof had spoken. By afternoon, I received a note from HR requesting input on the project handover. My timeline, my emails, my screenshots, everything was now formally recognized. I looked at my screen, scrolling through months of organized proof. Each entry told a story Daniel couldn't rewrite. Each timestamp was a step forward. The quiet was sweeter than applause. And I understood then what patience really meant. Not revenge. Not confrontation. Just being meticulous, methodical, and unshakable. I leaned back in my chair, letting the office hum around me. Finally, control was mine, without anyone knowing it was earned. By Monday morning, the tension had turned into whispers. People I had trained months ago now looked at me differently, quietly asking questions they never dared ask before. I watched Daniel arrive late, checking his phone, trying to appear calm. He stopped at the conference room and waved casually at the team, but no one waved back. I sat at my desk, keeping my hands folded, pretending to type while observing everything. At 10 sharp, a request came from leadership. They wanted a full audit of the project history. Daniel forwarded the request to me without comment, clearly expecting me to struggle under pressure. I smiled inside. I opened my meticulously organized folder, the one I had spent weeks perfecting. Every email, every timestamp, every approval in chronological order. I compiled it into a single package and sent it to leadership before Daniel could react. I saw him glance at his inbox, his face tightening when he realized I had already completed the task flawlessly. Meetings were called to discuss progress. Daniel tried to explain some delays as minor errors. I responded only with documentation. Numbers, dates, emails, screenshots. He stumbled mid-sentence. Leadership asked more questions. I answered, calmly, clearly. The room shifted. Daniel's authority, once unquestioned, now felt fragile. By the end of the day, he avoided my desk completely. I didn't smile out loud. I let the silence speak for me. By midweek, the first real cracks appeared. Daniel made a small but crucial mistake. He sent an email to the wrong distribution list, attaching a partial report that contradicted earlier statements he had made. The moment it happened, I opened my saved folder, compared timestamps, and highlighted the inconsistencies. I didn't call attention to it. I waited. Later that morning, leadership called another meeting. Daniel tried to explain the discrepancy, but I quietly provided the proof, showing the corrected sequence without raising my voice. The room grew tense. Eyes flicked between me and Daniel. His confidence wavered. His explanations faltered. Every excuse he made was matched by my documentation, and there was no arguing against hard evidence. I noticed subtle things, the way his hand tightened on the table, the shallow breaths, the small stutter before he spoke. By the afternoon, colleagues approached me discreetly, asking questions about processes and approvals. I answered succinctly, letting my files do the talking. Daniel tried to interject, to regain control, but each interruption was deflected by facts, dates, and proof. He glanced at leadership nervously, realizing they were now paying attention to the record, not his confidence. At 5, Daniel left early. The office was quieter, and I stayed late, reviewing the timeline. Every entry was now a weapon. every saved email a shield. The balance of power had shifted. The game had begun, and I held all the cards. The next morning, Daniel arrived with forced confidence, but the room already felt different. People whispered softly, glances exchanged, subtle nods toward me that he didn't notice. He opened the weekly status meeting, attempting charm, trying to frame the previous errors as minor miscommunications, but the air was heavier than his explanations could lighten. I waited, silently, letting him speak while internally cataloging every gesture, every hesitation. When he stumbled on a question about deadlines I had previously outlined, I quietly presented the timeline, exact emails, and notes without raising my voice. Leadership paused, leaning closer to review the documents. I saw his jaw tighten. He tried to explain. His words rushed, unconvincing, each argument met with precise proof I had saved months ago. A senior manager cleared her throat and asked another question Daniel hadn't anticipated. His confidence faltered further, a small stutter revealing panic he tried to hide. The new lead shifted in his seat, unsure where to look. By the end of the meeting, Daniel avoided eye contact with me entirely, retreating silently to his office. I stayed behind, reviewing the timeline again, updating it with today's exchanges. Every email, every timestamp, every approval in perfect order. The office hummed around me, oblivious to the tension that had shifted irreversibly. I didn't smile. I didn't need to. The evidence was speaking, and Daniel had no defense. The long game had begun, and he was already losing. By Thursday, Daniel's arrogance was working against him. He attempted to claim credit for a milestone he hadn't completed, forwarding a partial report to leadership. I quietly noted the discrepancies, opening my meticulously organized files and confirming exact dates, emails, and approvals. When the team meeting began, Daniel started speaking confidently, but I calmly displayed the original documentation. Every deviation, every misattribution was evident in black and white. He faltered mid-sentence, eyes darting nervously between leadership and me, realizing the room now focused on facts instead of his charm. Leadership asked pointed questions, and I answered succinctly, showing timelines, emails, and work logs. Daniel tried to interject, to shift blame subtly, but each word he said contradicted the record I had built over months. I watched him shrink in real time, his body language betraying panic. After the meeting, whispers followed him down the hall, colleagues now cautiously questioning his version of events. I returned to my desk, adding notes from the session to the master folder, reinforcing the evidence chain. By late afternoon, Daniel retreated to his office, door closed, silent, avoiding everyone. The project thrived under measured guidance, while his missteps piled up. I didn't boast. I didn't speak. I merely ensured that each record, each timestamp, each saved message stood ready to expose the arrogance that thought charm could outweigh truth. The momentum had shifted irreversibly. Daniel was unraveling, quietly, methodically, and I was fully in control. By Monday, Daniel's mistakes were piling up faster than he could manage. A client requested updates he promised last week, but failed to deliver. I quietly noted the timestamps, opening my folder and comparing the timeline to the emails he sent. Every promised deadline he missed, every approval he claimed, every credit he tried to take was documented. During the morning meeting, he attempted to explain, but leadership asked questions only my records could answer. I presented the emails and project files calmly, letting the evidence speak louder than my voice. He stumbled mid-sentence, red creeping across his face. My colleagues shifted uneasily, glancing between us, noticing the growing gap between what Daniel claimed and what the record showed. Daniel tried to regain control, interjecting, apologizing, smiling nervously, but his charm no longer worked. I silently watched, cataloging every falter. By noon, a senior manager privately requested my full timeline for review, citing discrepancies Daniel couldn't clarify. He leaned against the wall, pretending he was in control, but I saw the panic in his eyes. The office felt different now. People stopped deferring to him. Every word he said was measured, restrained, heavy with doubt. I returned to my desk, adding notes, double-checking the master file. The slow burn I had planned for months was reaching its crescendo. Daniel was unraveling under the weight of his own arrogance, and I had the evidence ready to ensure it would be irreversible. By midweek, the tension had become unmistakable. Daniel arrived late, sweating slightly despite the cool office air, his phone vibrating constantly. Emails from leadership piled up, questions he could not answer without my timeline. The new lead approached nervously, trying to help, but every suggestion contradicted the documented record I had meticulously kept. During the afternoon project meeting, Daniel attempted a bold claim about progress he hadn't achieved, his tone louder than usual, trying to dominate the room. I waited silently, opening my folder and projecting the timeline onto the screen, every email, every approval, every decision in perfect order. The room went quiet. Daniel's face tightened as he realized every claim he made was contradicted in real time. Leadership asked precise, pointed questions, and I responded calmly, showing facts and evidence without emotion. Colleagues shifted in their seats, glances exchanged, awareness spreading. Daniel tried to speak, to justify, to charm, but each word exposed another inconsistency. He stepped back, muttering under his breath, pale and flustered. By the end of the meeting, he retreated to his office, avoiding eye contact with anyone, leaving the room tense and silent. I returned to my desk and added today's notes to the master timeline, ensuring every detail of his unraveling was captured. The momentum was now fully mine. Daniel's arrogance had built the trap, and every misstep brought him closer to a downfall that was quiet, methodical, and utterly irreversible. I sat back, calm, knowing the endgame had begun. By Thursday, Daniel's tension was palpable. He entered the office trying to smile, but it faltered with every glance toward me. Emails stacked in his inbox, each one requiring clarity he could not provide without consulting the records I had maintained. He walked past colleagues, their expressions cautious, some almost wary, all subtly acknowledging the shift in authority. During the morning check-in, he attempted to explain a minor error to leadership, hoping to recover ground, but I calmly displayed the supporting documentation, showing exactly what had occurred and when. He stuttered, his hands trembling slightly on the conference table, his confidence dissolving in real time. Leadership asked additional questions, precise and pointed, and every answer I provided further contradicted his version. Colleagues whispered quietly, noticing the cracks widening. Daniel tried to charm his way through, leaning on tone and inflection, but the room no longer responded to bravado. Only facts mattered now. After the meeting, he retreated to his office, closing the door firmly behind him, avoiding everyone's eyes. I sat at my desk, reviewing the master timeline, adding each small misstep, each miscommunication, each misattribution, reinforcing the chain of evidence. The momentum was entirely mine. Daniel's errors, combined with months of meticulous documentation, had made him powerless. Every move he made to assert control now played directly into the structure I had built. By late afternoon, the office hum was steady, confident, and my position unassailable. The end game was within reach, and he had no idea it had already begun. Friday arrived with a sense of inevitability. Daniel showed up early, pretending calm, checking his phone constantly, flinching at every message. The senior manager called an emergency session to review project progress. Daniel tried to lead, speaking confidently, but I quietly projected the original timeline, emails, and approvals onto the screen. Every claim he made was contradicted instantly, and the room went silent. Leadership asked sharp questions, and I answered precisely, without emotion, letting the facts speak. Daniel's voice faltered, his hands shook slightly. Colleagues exchanged looks, the unspoken realization spreading. Control had shifted. Daniel tried to interject, stammering, red creeping across his face, but every word only revealed another inconsistency. By mid-meeting, the senior manager leaned forward, asking Daniel for clarifications he could not provide. I calmly responded, reinforcing the accuracy of my documentation. He swallowed, glanced at leadership nervously, and tried to regain composure, but the gap between perception and truth was undeniable. By the end of the session, Daniel left abruptly, muttering excuses, avoiding every eye, leaving a silence that screamed more than any confrontation could. I returned to my desk, updating the master timeline, ensuring every moment of his unraveling was captured. The office was no longer his. The power, the trust, and the recognition belonged entirely to me. Daniel's arrogance had built the trap, and every misstep, every oversight, every false claim had delivered him to it. I leaned back, calm, satisfied, knowing the final phase of justice was within reach. By Monday, the office had transformed. People no longer deferred to Daniel. Emails once filled with his directives were now routed through me. The whispers grew louder, subtle nods toward my desk, colleagues quietly asking questions they would never have asked before. Daniel arrived, trying to mask panic behind a confident stride, but I noticed the slight tremor in his hands and the way his eyes avoided mine. A leadership call came in mid-morning. Daniel attempted to lead, but his voice wavered. I silently prepared, pulling the timeline, emails, and screenshots into a clean sequence, ready for any challenge. During the video call, Daniel made a small misstatement, claiming responsibility for a milestone that I had completed. I projected the proof immediately. Dates, approvals, and email confirmations displayed clearly, leaving no room for dispute. Leadership asked questions. Daniel faltered, his stammering revealing more than he intended. Colleagues noticed. Their respect had shifted entirely, and Daniel realized it. By noon, whispers reached me. Everyone had seen the pattern, the proof, the control I had quietly maintained. Daniel retreated again, avoiding meetings, avoiding me, as if I were the storm he could not survive. I stayed focused, updating the master timeline with today's events, each entry a step toward irreversible truth. The office now hummed under the rhythm of my authority. Daniel's arrogance had built his own cage, and I held the key, silent, methodical, unyielding, and unstoppable. By Wednesday, Daniel's position had become untenable. Leadership requested a full project review, citing discrepancies and inconsistencies in his prior reports. Emails and calls arrived in rapid succession, all pointing toward the documentation I had compiled. Daniel tried to regain control, sending messages, explaining errors, but each attempt only exposed his inability to provide accurate proof. During the review meeting, he spoke first, confident, trying to frame the narrative in his favor. I remained silent, waiting. When leadership asked for supporting evidence, I presented the complete timeline, every email, every approval, every project milestone, organized meticulously. Daniel's confident expression faltered immediately. His explanations contradicted the facts. Colleagues exchanged glances, murmuring quietly, sensing the power shift. He tried again to speak, but I answered calmly, presenting timestamps and emails that directly disproved his claims. Sweat appeared at his temples, his words stumbled, and the weight of evidence pressed down on him like a physical force. By the end of the review, leadership requested formal documentation from me alone. Daniel sat frozen, unable to meet my eyes. Emails of praise arrived for my thoroughness, clarity, and leadership. Colleagues stopped asking him for guidance and came to me instead. He left the office early, muttering excuses, defeated quietly without confrontation. I returned to my desk, updating the master folder, ensuring today's collapse was recorded precisely. The office had shifted. Control, authority, and respect were now mine entirely, earned through patience, intelligence, and unyielding proof. By Thursday morning, Daniel's downfall became public. Leadership called an urgent meeting and asked him to present the project status. His voice, once confident and commanding, trembled as he tried to explain the discrepancies, misattributions, and errors he had made over the past months. I sat quietly, the master folder open on my laptop, timestamps, emails, and approvals ready. Every statement he made was contradicted instantly. Leadership asked precise questions, and I calmly answered, presenting proof with clarity and authority. Daniel's face went pale. He tried to regain control, waving his hands, speaking quickly, but every word only exposed another inconsistency. Colleagues leaned forward, watching the unraveling with a mix of awe and disbelief. By mid-meeting, Daniel slumped in his chair, muttering excuses that no one accepted. Leadership paused, reviewed the documents, and concluded the review by requesting my formal handover of project oversight. Daniel remained silent, powerless, and for the first time, the room no longer belonged to him. Emails from leadership confirming my authority arrived immediately afterward. The office hummed quietly, eyes on me, respect finally aligned with the facts. I didn't speak. I didn't celebrate. I updated the timeline with today's collapse, capturing each moment of his arrogance that had led to this. Control had shifted irreversibly. Daniel's downfall was complete, built entirely from his own misjudgments. The trap I set methodically over months had closed, and I remained calm, unshaken, victorious. By Friday, Daniel had cleared his office. No farewell, no speech, just silence and the faint smell of his abandoned coffee mug. Colleagues approached me cautiously, quietly congratulating me, asking for guidance, and acknowledging the leadership I had demonstrated without ever raising my voice. The project ran smoothly under my oversight. Deadlines met, client satisfaction rising, and team morale improving visibly. I reviewed the master timeline one last time, every email, every approval, every step of proof meticulously documented. Daniel's absence had created a vacuum, and I filled it naturally, steadily, methodically. The office shifted around me, recognizing authority based on competence, integrity, and preparation rather than charm or intimidation. By mid-afternoon, HR formally acknowledged my leadership role, sending confirmation emails copied to leadership and all relevant stakeholders. I didn't feel vindictive. I felt validation and clarity. Months of meticulous planning, patience, and methodical action had produced not just victory, but undeniable justice. Every misstep Daniel made had contributed to his downfall, yet no one had to confront him personally. The office hummed under new energy. Team members sought my advice and insight. I answered carefully, allowing my work and decisions to speak. Power had shifted quietly, methodically, and perfectly. I leaned back, reflecting on the months of preparation, understanding fully that true influence does not shout. It proves itself with evidence, patience, and intelligence. Daniel's arrogance had created his cage. I had built the door. Weeks later, the office thrived under my guidance. Projects flowed efficiently, deadlines were met, and trust returned. Colleagues approached me openly, sharing ideas, consulting on decisions, and acknowledging the structure I had implemented. Daniel had vanished from the project entirely, his reputation quietly diminished. I reviewed the master timeline one final time, confirming every record was complete and flawless. My work had endured. Every email, every note, every timestamp reinforced the proof of my foresight and patience. Leadership continued to acknowledge my reliability and clarity, formally promoting me to lead upcoming projects with full authority. I didn't celebrate loudly. I didn't need validation from those who had doubted me. My satisfaction came quietly, in knowing the strategy one had executed had worked perfectly, methodically, and without compromise. I walked through the office, noticing the subtle shifts in respect, the quiet recognition that comes from earned authority. Each colleague I passed no longer saw Daniel's shadow, only the structure and foresight I had built. Months of restraint, patience, and meticulous documentation had led to this outcome: undeniable authority, earned trust, and a thriving environment where competence ruled. I closed my laptop for the day, leaned back in my chair, and exhaled slowly. Daniel's arrogance had destroyed him. My strategy had elevated me. I knew my worth, I knew my power, and for the first time in months, I smiled fully, freely, and without doubt, ready to thrive in a world I had earned.